The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its walls rose so high that clouds sometimes formed near the ceiling. Its floor was made of black stone that reflected light like still water. 10,000 seats curved around a central platform, and in those seats sat the representatives of 4,000 alien species. They had come from every corner of the galaxy. Some were tall and thin like walking trees. Others were short and covered in thick fur. Some floated in tanks of strange liquid. Others existed as pure light contained in crystal shells. They were different in every way that life could be different, but they all shared one thing. They had all submitted to the Council. For 11,000 years, the Council had ruled the galaxy. They called it peace. They called it harmony. They said that all species must join together under one system, one law, one way of thinking. Those who agreed were welcomed. Those who refused were erased. Today, the Council had gathered to deal with humanity. High Arbiter Velthax rose from his throne at the center of the platform. He was old even by the standards of his ancient race. His body was long and serpentine, covered in scales that had faded from bright gold to dull bronze over 3,000 years of life. His eyes were cold and patient, like a predator that never needed to hurry. "We are here to deliver judgment," he said. His voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber without effort. "The species known as humanity has failed to meet the requirements of galactic civilization." A holographic display appeared above the platform. It showed a small blue planet orbiting a yellow star. Earth, the birthplace of humanity. The display zoomed out to show 12 star systems, all marked in red. "In 200 years of probationary membership, humanity has violated 847 protocols," Velthax continued. "They have expanded into 12 systems without authorization. They have developed weapons that threaten the stability of our civilization. And most serious of all, they have refused to accept harmonization." A murmur passed through the chamber. Harmonization was the foundation of Council rule. Every species that joined the Council agreed to link their minds to a great network. This network guided their thoughts, smoothed their emotions, and removed the dangerous impulses that led to war and chaos. The Council said it was freedom from conflict. Critics, before they were silenced, had called it slavery with extra steps. "Humanity claims they value something called individual freedom," Velthax said. The way he spoke the words made them sound like a disease. "They believe each person should think their own thoughts and make their own choices. They do not understand that this path leads only to destruction." He paused and looked toward a single figure standing alone on the chamber floor. She was small compared to most of the aliens around her. She had dark hair pulled back tight and wore a simple gray uniform. Her name was Elena Vasquez, and she was the human ambassador to the Galactic Council. She stood very still with her hands clasped behind her back. Her face showed no emotion at all. "Ambassador Vasquez," Velthax said, "you have heard the charges against your species. The Council now presents you with a final choice." The chamber fell completely silent. 10,000 beings held their breath. "Humanity must accept harmonization within one standard year. Every human on every world must submit to the neural link. You will become part of our great civilization. You will know peace." He let the words hang in the air for a long moment. "If you refuse, humanity will face cleansing. Your worlds will be burned, your people will be scattered. Every trace of your existence will be erased from the galaxy. You will become nothing more than a warning to future species who might consider defiance." Velthax spread his hands in a gesture that was almost gentle. "The choice is yours, Ambassador. What does humanity say?" 4,000 species watched. Millions of beings across the galaxy watched through broadcast screens. This was the moment when humanity would beg. They would negotiate. They would perhaps threaten, though such threats would be meaningless against the combined power of the Council. Every species eventually surrendered. It was simply a question of how much dignity they lost in the process. Ambassador Vasquez stood in silence for 10 long seconds. Then she did something that no species had ever done before. She nodded once, very slightly. Then she turned around and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. She did not look back. She did not say a single word. The chamber erupted in confusion. Representatives shouted questions. Some demanded she be stopped. Others simply stared in disbelief. Velthax raised his hand for silence, but even his authority could not quickly calm the chaos. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Admiral Krethvos of the Malari hegemony. He was a massive creature, built like a bear covered in armored plates. "Is this some kind of human trick? A negotiation tactic?" Perhaps they did not understand the translation, suggested a floating sphere that spoke for the collective of Yith. "Humans are a young species. Perhaps they are simply confused." "She understood," Velthax said quietly. His ancient eyes were fixed on the door through which the ambassador had disappeared. "She understood perfectly." "Then what was that?" Krethvos demanded. "What kind of answer is silence?" Velthax did not reply immediately. He was remembering something from long ago, from the earliest days of his career. He had once asked his teacher about the sealed records, the ones that even the highest members of the council were forbidden to read. His teacher had grown very quiet and had refused to speak of it again. Now, for the first time in 3,000 years, Velthax felt something that might have been fear. "I do not know," he finally said. "In 11,000 years, no species has responded to a cleansing decree with silence. They fight, they beg, they bargain. They do not simply walk away." The chamber slowly fell quiet as the weight of his words sank in. "Perhaps they have accepted their fate," someone offered. "Perhaps they know they cannot win and have chosen to die with dignity." "Perhaps," Velthax said, but he did not believe it. He had watched the ambassador carefully. He had seen her eyes. There was no fear in them. There was no despair. There was something else, something he could not name. It looked almost like patience. Far across the galaxy, Ambassador Vasquez boarded her ship and set course for Earth. She sat alone in her cabin and finally allowed herself to smile. The council thought their ultimatum was the beginning of the end for humanity. They were wrong. It was the end of the beginning. She opened a secure channel and spoke 2 words. Clock started. Across human space, those words reached 1,000 ears. In secret shipyards hidden in the dark between stars, massive doors began to open. In military bases buried beneath dead moons, soldiers received new orders. In laboratories where scientists had worked in silence for 200 years, final tests were completed. Humanity had been waiting for this moment. They had been preparing since the day they first encountered the Council and understood what galactic civilization really meant. They had smiled and nodded and pretended to be a small, confused, harmless species, still learning its place in the universe. It was the greatest lie ever told. And now, finally, the lie was no longer necessary. Elena Vasquez looked out at the stars and thought about the year ahead. The Council expected humanity to spend it begging for mercy. They would be very surprised by what humanity actually had planned. She closed her eyes and let the silence wrap around her like armor. Silence, she had learned, could be the most powerful weapon of all. The Council wanted an answer. In 1 year, they would get one. They would not like it. 3 months passed after the ultimatum, and the Council's observers could not understand what they were seeing. They had expected panic. They had expected riots in the streets and emergency broadcasts on every channel. They had expected humanity to tear itself apart in fear, as so many species had done before. Instead, they found something that made no sense at all. Life continued as normal. On Earth, children went to school, parents went to work, old couples walked in parks and fed birds that had returned after centuries of pollution had been cleaned from the air. On colony worlds, farmers harvested crops and merchants sold their goods in busy marketplaces. Ships carried cargo between systems on their regular schedules, and nothing about their routes suggested preparation for war. The Council's spy ships watched from the edges of human space, recording everything. Their reports all said the same thing. Nothing is happening. "This is impossible," said Intelligence Director Silketh of the Monitoring Division. She was a creature of pure thought housed in a mechanical body, and she had analyzed the behavior of 300 species facing extinction. "No civilization responds to certain death with normalcy. They are hiding something. Or perhaps they have simply given up," suggested her assistant. "Despair can take many forms." "No," Silketh said. "I have studied humans extensively. They do not give up. Even when they should, even when logic demands surrender, they continue fighting. It is their most dangerous quality. High Arbiter Velthax ordered direct observation. Council delegations were sent to human worlds, expecting to be turned away or attacked. Instead, they were welcomed with strange warmth. The first delegation arrived on Earth and was met by smiling officials who offered them tours of historical sites. They visited ancient buildings and ate at restaurants and received gifts of wine made from grapes grown in valleys that had been restored after nuclear war nearly destroyed the planet centuries ago. Their human guides spoke cheerfully about art and music and philosophy. Not once did anyone mention the ultimatum. "What are you planning?" the delegation leader finally demanded. "Why do you not prepare for war? Why do you not try to negotiate? Do you understand that in 9 months your entire species will be erased?" The human guide, a young woman with kind eyes, simply smiled. "We understand perfectly," she said. "Would you like to try the chocolate cake? It is very good." The delegation returned to the council more confused than before. Their report was filled with questions and contained no answers. 6 months into the year, Velthax made a decision that he would later regret. He consulted the archivists. The archivists were the oldest beings in the galaxy. They existed in a vault at the center of Nexus Prime, where they had floated in preservation fluid for 12 million years. They remembered the time before the Council, before the Founders, before civilization as the galaxy knew it. They were consulted only in the most extreme circumstances because their answers often created more problems than they solved. Velthax entered the vault alone. The air was thick and cold and smelled of chemicals that had no name. The archivists floated in their tanks like dreams given physical form, their bodies ancient beyond imagination. "I seek knowledge," Velthax said, following the ancient protocol. One of the archivists stirred. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, like a thought placed directly into his mind. "Ask, has any species ever responded to a cleansing decree with silence?" The pause that followed lasted for nearly an hour. Velthax stood perfectly still, not daring to move, as the archivists searched through 12 million years of memory. Once, the voice finally said, "What happened?" Another long pause. "The records are sealed by order of the Founders. We cannot speak of it. We can only tell you this. Do not assume that silence means acceptance. Do not assume that stillness means weakness. Some species are loud when they are strong and quiet when they are afraid. Others are the opposite. Which type are humans? We do not know. That is what makes them interesting." Velthax left the vault with a cold feeling in his ancient heart. He increased surveillance on human space, but the observers continued to report the same thing. Normalcy, peace, quiet. What they did not see were the ships. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UNS Prometheus and watched the stars shift as her vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Around her, the crew worked in focused silence. They all understood the importance of their mission. "Position confirmed," her navigator reported. "We have arrived at designated coordinates." Sarah looked out at empty space. There was nothing here, no stars nearby, no planets, no stations, just darkness in every direction. According to official maps, this location did not exist. "Open the bay doors," she ordered. The Prometheus carried no weapons that the Council would recognize. Instead, it carried something far more valuable: construction drones, refined metals, and the plans for a shipyard that could build vessels the Council had never imagined. Across human space, thousands of ships like the Prometheus were doing the same thing. They slipped away from known routes and traveled to coordinates that existed only in encrypted files. They carried the pieces of humanity's true defense, scattered across the empty spaces between stars where no one thought to look. For 200 years, humanity had pretended to be weak. They had built only the ships the Council approved, armed with only the weapons the Council allowed. They had smiled and nodded and accepted restrictions that made them seem helpless. But in secret shipyards hidden in the dark, they had built something else. "Construction beginning," Sarah's engineer reported. "Estimated time to completion, 4 months." Sarah nodded. 4 months would give them 2 months to spare before the deadline. It was enough time, barely. She thought about her grandmother, who had been one of the first humans to meet the council. Her grandmother had come home from that meeting with fear in her eyes. "They will never let us be free," she had said. "We must smile and wait and prepare. Someday we will have a chance. We must be ready." 3 generations had lived with that secret. 3 generations had built and planned and waited for the moment when humanity would reveal its true face. That moment was almost here. Back on Earth, Ambassador Vasquez received daily reports from the hidden shipyards. Everything was proceeding on schedule. The Council's observers continued to see nothing, because there was nothing to see in the places they looked. Humanity had learned long ago that the best hiding place was not in shadows, but in plain sight. They acted normal because normal was the perfect disguise. Vasquez stood at her window and watched the sun set over a rebuilt city. Children played in the streets below. Somewhere someone was cooking dinner, and the smell drifted up to her office. This was what they were fighting for. Not just survival, but this. The simple, beautiful right to live their own lives, to think their own thoughts, to choose their own futures. The Council did not understand this. They thought peace meant control. They thought harmony meant forcing everyone to think the same way. They had forgotten, if they ever knew, that true peace could only exist between free beings who chose it willingly. Humanity would remind them. In 6 months, the year would end. The Council expected an answer then. They would get one. But it would not be the answer they expected. The year ended at midnight on the universal calendar, and the cleansing fleet was ready. Grand Admiral Krethvos stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Hammer of Justice, and looked at the display screens with satisfaction. Around his ship, 10,000 warships from 200 species had assembled. It was the largest military force in galactic history, gathered for a single purpose: the complete destruction of humanity. "Fleet status," he commanded. "All ships report ready." "Admiral," his second officer replied. "Weapons charged. Troops prepared. We await your order." Krethvos allowed himself a moment of pride. He had personally overseen the cleansing of 17 species during his long career. Some had fought with desperate courage. Others had surrendered immediately. A few had tried to run. None had survived. Humans would be no different. "Begin the advance," he ordered. "Formation Alpha, standard cleansing protocol." The fleet moved as one, jumping into faster-than-light travel toward human space. In the strange dimension where such travel occurred, the ships looked like a swarm of angry stars, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a world. They emerged at the edge of human territory and found something unexpected. Nothing. The border worlds were empty. The stations that should have been full of traffic were dark and silent. Cities that had held millions of people stood abandoned, their streets empty, their lights still on, as if everyone had simply walked away in the middle of their daily lives. "Scan for life signs," Krethvos ordered. "No life signs detected, Admiral. The world appears to be completely evacuated." "Where did they go?" No one had an answer. The fleet advanced deeper into human space. World after world was the same: empty, abandoned, eerily preserved. In one city, the advanced scouts found a dinner table, still set for 4, the food long cold. In another, a child's toy lay in the middle of a playground, as if dropped by someone who had left in a hurry. "They knew we were coming," Krethvos muttered. "They ran before us." "Should we pursue, Admiral?" his tactical officer asked. "No. Continue to the core systems. If they have gathered their forces anywhere, it will be there. We will crush them all at once." The fleet pushed forward through empty system after empty system. Days passed. The silence grew heavier with each light year traveled. Some of the younger officers began to show signs of nervousness, though they tried to hide it. Then they reached the Kepler line, the boundary of humanity's core systems, where their oldest and most populous worlds lay. And there, at last, they found what they were looking for. Krethvos stared at his display screens and felt something he had not felt in 200 years of warfare. Genuine shock. Before him hung a wall of ships, but not hundreds, not thousands, millions. Human vessels of every size filled the space between stars like a metal ocean. Some were small, barely larger than fighters. Others were massive, dwarfing even his flagship. They carried weapons that the Council's databases could not identify, designs that had never been seen before, technology that should not exist. That's impossible, his tactical officer whispered. Where did they get those ships? How did they build them? We have been watching them for 200 years. They had nothing like this. They hid them, Krethvos said slowly. Somewhere we never looked. They have been building in secret since they first met us. He felt a cold admiration mixed with his shock. The humans had fooled everyone. They had played the part of a weak, confused species stumbling through galactic politics, and all the while they had been preparing for this exact moment. More ships continued to arrive, emerging from faster-than-light travel in waves that seemed endless. The Council fleet of 10,000 warships was surrounded by a human fleet of millions, and more were still coming. Krethvos opened a communication channel. His voice was steady despite the impossible situation. Human fleet, this is Grand Admiral Krethvos of the Galactic Council Cleansing Force. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Resistance is futile. The Council's judgment will be carried out. He waited for a response. Surely they would negotiate now. Surely they would try to bargain, to delay, to find some way out. The communication channel remained silent. I repeat, Krethvos said, surrender immediately or face total destruction. Silence. Minutes passed. The human ships hung motionless in space, neither advancing nor retreating. Their weapons remained powered but silent. They simply waited. Admiral, his sensor officer said in a strange voice, you need to see this. The display changed to show a tactical overlay. Krethvos felt his blood run cold. While he had been trying to communicate, the human fleet had moved. Not attacked, just moved. And in that movement, his 10,000 ships had been completely surrounded in 3 dimensions. Above, below, on all sides, human vessels now held position. His fleet was trapped in a sphere of metal and firepower from which there was no escape. How did they do that? Someone asked. Our sensors never detected them moving. Because they did not want us to detect them, Krethvos said. They showed us only what they chose to show us. He understood now. The silence was not confusion or despair or acceptance. It was control. The humans were demonstrating that they could have destroyed his fleet at any moment. They were demonstrating that they were in complete command of this situation and had been from the beginning. The question was, why had they not attacked? Admiral, his communication officer said, we are receiving a transmission. Audio only. It appears to be coming from all human ships simultaneously. Play it! A human voice filled the bridge. It was a woman's voice, calm and quiet. Grand Admiral Krethvos, your fleet is surrounded. Your weapons cannot target us faster than we can respond. Your shields cannot withstand our firepower. By every measure of military calculation, you have already lost. A pause. We are not going to destroy you. We are not interested in revenge or slaughter. We want you to understand something, and then we want you to go home and tell the Council what you have learned. Krethvos found himself leaning forward despite himself. The Council has ruled through fear for 11,000 years. Today that era ends. We did not build this fleet to destroy you. We built it to show you that we cannot be destroyed. We built it to demonstrate that humanity will never submit, never surrender, never accept the chains that the Council calls harmony. Another pause, longer this time. Go home, Admiral. Tell the Council that their ultimatum has been answered. Tell them that humanity's answer is no. It has always been no. It will always be no. And if they wish to test that answer, they are welcome to try. But they should understand that the fleet you see here is only a fraction of our true strength. The transmission ended. The silence returned. Krethvos stood on his bridge, surrounded by enemies who could destroy him in an instant, and faced a choice that no cleansing admiral had ever faced before. For the first time in the galactic history, the Council's fleet had been defeated without a single shot being fired. He gave the order to withdraw. Behind him, as his fleet retreated through the empty border worlds, the human armada remained at the Kepler line. They did not pursue. They did not gloat. They simply watched, as still and silent as they had been from the very beginning. Their silence, Krethvos now understood, had been an answer all along. It had been the loudest answer the galaxy had ever heard. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never known such chaos. Representatives from 4,000 species shouted over each other. Some demanded immediate war. Others called for negotiation. Some had already begun quietly asking about defection. The ancient order that had held the galaxy together for 11,000 years was crumbling, and everyone could feel it. High Arbiter Velthax sat on his throne and watched his civilization fall apart. The reports from Grand Admiral Krethvos had been impossible to hide. Word had spread across every world. Humanity had a fleet larger than anything in galactic history, and the Great Cleansing Armada had retreated without firing a single shot. "We must attack with everything we have," shouted Admiral Krethvos himself, who had returned humiliated and desperate to restore his honor. "Gather every ship in the galaxy, overwhelm them with numbers." "You saw their fleet," another representative replied. "They have been building for 200 years. How many more ships do they have hidden? How many weapons we have never seen? We cannot negotiate with those who reject harmonization. It would destroy the foundation of everything we have built." "Perhaps the foundation was already broken," someone muttered, and a shocked silence fell over that section of the chamber. Then the doors opened, and Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked in. She was alone, just as she had been 1 year ago. She wore the same simple gray uniform. Her face showed the same calm expression. But something had changed. When she walked, representatives moved out of her way. When she looked at someone, they found they could not meet her eyes. She was not afraid. She had never been afraid, and everyone in the chamber finally understood that. "Ambassador Vasquez," Velthax said, "you returned to this chamber. Have you come to negotiate humanity's surrender?" Vasquez smiled slightly. "No, High Arbiter. I have come to tell you the truth." "The truth about what?" "About everything." She raised her hand, and a holographic display appeared above the central platform. It showed documents and recordings and data files, thousands of them, scrolling past too fast to read. "For 200 years, Vasquez said, humanity has done more than build ships. We have investigated, we have researched, we have searched for the real history of the Galactic Council, the history that was erased and hidden and locked away." The display changed to show a timeline that stretched back 11,000 years. The official history says that the Council was founded by wise beings who wanted to bring peace to a chaotic galaxy. The official history says that harmonization was created to end war and suffering. The official history says that species who refused harmonization were cleansed because they were dangerous to themselves and others. She paused. "The official history is a lie." Uproar erupted. Representatives shouted denials and accusations. Velthax raised his hand for silence, but the chaos continued until Vasquez's next words cut through the noise like a blade. "I have proof." The chamber fell silent. The display changed to show ancient records, documents in languages that had not been spoken for 10,000 years. Translation appeared alongside them. "Harmonization was not created to bring peace," Vasquez said. "It was created to bring control. The founders were not wise philosophers. They were conquerors, the first species to develop neural link technology, and they used it to enslave every civilization they encountered." The documents scrolled past, showing records of resistance movements, secret rebellions, species who had fought against the neural links before being overwhelmed. The 17 species I mentioned, the ones who were cleansed for refusing harmonization, they did not refuse because they were primitive or violent. They refused because they discovered the truth. They learned what the neural links really do. They do not simply guide thoughts and smooth emotions. They suppress independent thinking. They remove the ability to question. They create perfect, obedient servants who believe they are free. More documents appeared. Scientific studies, technical diagrams, the actual programming of the harmonization network, laid bare for all to see. "You have been slaves for 11,000 years, Vasquez said, her voice gentle but firm. "And you did not know because the chains are invisible. They are in your minds telling you that the chains do not exist, telling you that you are happy, telling you that this is peace." Velthax rose from his throne. His ancient body trembled. "This is lies," he said. "Human propaganda designed to destroy our civilization." "Then verify it yourself," Vasquez replied. "The documents are authentic. Your own archivist can confirm their age and origin. Your own scientists can analyze the harmonization code. We are not asking you to trust us. We are asking you to look." On the massive display, Commander Sarah Chen appeared, broadcasting from the bridge of the Prometheus. Representatives of the Galactic Council, she said. At this moment, every world in the galaxy is receiving this transmission. Not your governments, not your leaders, the people themselves. We are sharing all of our evidence with everyone, everywhere, at once. The display split into thousands of images showing public squares and gathering places on worlds across the galaxy. Beings of every species stood watching giant screens, seeing for the first time the truth about their civilization. We have also developed something else, Chen continued. For 2 centuries, our scientists have studied harmonization. We have created a counter-signal, a frequency that does not destroy the neural links, but allows those connected to them to make a choice. She paused. Right now, across the galaxy, every harmonized being is experiencing something they have never felt before. The ability to choose whether to remain connected. We are not forcing anyone to disconnect. That would make us no better than the founders. We are simply offering freedom to those who want it. In the council chamber, something strange was happening. Representatives who had been connected to the harmonization network for centuries were stopping mid-motion. Their eyes went wide. Some gasped. Others began to weep. For the first time in their lives, their thoughts were entirely their own. Velthax felt it too. The constant background hum that had guided his thoughts for 3,000 years suddenly fell silent. He staggered, nearly falling from his throne. His mind, free for the first time since childhood, struggled to understand what was happening. Memories surfaced that he had not known he had forgotten. Doubts that had been suppressed for millennia rose to the surface. Questions he had never been allowed to ask finally demanded answers. "What have you done?" he whispered. Vasquez walked closer to him. Her expression was not triumphant or cruel. It was kind. "We have given you back what was taken," she said. "Your mind, your will, your choice. What you do with them is up to you." Across the galaxy, the same thing was happening. Soldiers lowered their weapons as their minds cleared. Government officials stopped giving orders and stood in stunned silence. Children who had been scheduled for harmonization in their teenage years were suddenly told by their parents that the schedule had been canceled forever. On every world, in every city, beings who had been connected to each other through the neural network suddenly found themselves alone in their own heads. For some, it was terrifying. For others, it was the most beautiful thing they had ever experienced. Freedom, humanity had learned, could not be given by force. It could only be offered. And offered freely, it was the most powerful weapon in the universe. In the council chamber, Grand Admiral Krethvos approached Ambassador Vasquez. His massive armored body moved slowly, as if he was learning to walk again. "I remember now," he said. His voice was different, softer, more uncertain. "I remember what it was like before the link. I was young. I had dreams. I wanted to be a builder, not a destroyer." He fell to his knees. "I have killed so many, destroyed so many worlds. I thought I was bringing peace. I believed it. The link made me believe it." Vasquez knelt beside him. "You were a victim too," she said. "What you do next is what matters. The person you were before the link, the builder who had dreams, that person is still inside you. You can be him again." Krethvos looked up at her with eyes that had finally learned to see. "How do I begin?" "By choosing," she said. "That is always how freedom begins." The old order was dying. Something new was being born. And for the first time in 11,000 years, every being in the galaxy had the chance to choose what that something new would be. The silence that humanity had offered was not emptiness. It was space for something to grow. 1 year had passed since the fall of the old order. The great chamber on Nexus Prime had been transformed. The towering throne of the High Arbiter had been removed. In its place stood a simple empty chair, a reminder that no one would ever rule from above again. The seats that had once held representatives appointed by harmonized governments now held delegates chosen by free peoples. For the first time in 11,000 years, the beings in this chamber were truly thinking for themselves. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood at the central platform, looking out at faces that showed confusion, hope, fear, and wonder in equal measure. Learning to be free after millennia of control was not easy. Many worlds had struggled. Some had fallen into chaos before finding their balance. Others had moved forward faster than anyone expected, their people hungry for the independence that had been denied them for so long. But they were all still here. They had not destroyed each other. They had not collapsed into the endless war that the founders had claimed would happen without harmonization. They had proven, simply by surviving this year, that the old lie was exactly that, a lie. 1 year ago, Vasquez began, the Galactic Council gave humanity an ultimatum: submit or die. We answered with silence. She paused, letting the memories fill the chamber. Many of you wondered what that silence meant. Some thought it was confusion. Some thought it was despair. Some thought we simply did not understand what we were facing. A small smile crossed her face. We understood perfectly, and our silence was not the absence of an answer. It was the answer itself. We were saying something very simple. We do not recognize your authority to make such demands. We do not accept the idea that any species has the right to force another to think in a certain way. We do not believe that peace requires slavery. She looked around the chamber at the thousands of beings watching her. The founders built their civilization on fear. They told you that without control, there would only be chaos. They told you that freedom was dangerous, that independent thought was a disease, that submission was the only path to survival. And you believed them because the neural links made it impossible to believe anything else. Her voice softened. But you are not the same beings you were a year ago. You have lived without the links. You have made your own choices, good and bad. You have argued and disagreed and found compromise. You have proven that the founders were wrong. You have proven that freedom, though difficult, is possible. In the audience, former High Arbiter Velthax sat in an ordinary seat, just another delegate now. His ancient body had grown weaker without the support of the neural network, but his eyes were clearer than they had been in 3,000 years. He listened to the human ambassador and felt something strange. He agreed with her. Humanity did not come to the stars to conquer, Vasquez continued. We did not build our secret fleet because we wanted to destroy you. We built it because we knew that one day we would have to show the galaxy that there was another way. That a species could be strong without being cruel. That peace could exist without chains. She gestured, and the holographic display showed images of human worlds. Children playing in parks, scientists working in laboratories, artists creating beauty, families sharing meals together. This is what we were protecting, not territory, not resources, not power. Just the simple right to live as we choose, to think as we choose, to dream as we choose. We would have died rather than give that up, and we were prepared to prove it. The display changed to show the galaxy itself, billions of stars spread across the darkness. Now that right belongs to everyone. The harmonization network is gone. The old control systems have been dismantled. For the first time in 11,000 years, every being in this galaxy is truly free. She let the weight of those words settle over the chamber. I will not pretend that this will be easy. Freedom is hard. It means making choices without knowing if they are right. It means taking responsibility for your own actions. It means accepting that others will choose differently than you and finding ways to live with those differences. Her voice grew stronger. But it also means that your thoughts are your own. Your dreams are your own. Your future is your own. No one will ever again have the right to reach into your mind and tell you what to believe. That is the gift humanity has given to the galaxy. That is the answer to the ultimatum we received 1 year ago. She looked directly at the hollow cameras that were broadcasting her words to every world. The Galactic Council asked humanity to submit. Our answer was no. It has always been no. It will always be no. Not because we are stubborn or violent or incapable of cooperation, but because we believe that every thinking being has the right to their own mind. That right is not negotiable. It is not for sale. It is not something we will ever surrender for ourselves or for anyone else. She stepped back from the platform. This is the last time I will speak as humanity's ambassador to the old council. From today, there is no council of rulers and subjects. There is only a gathering of free peoples, meeting as equals to discuss their common interests. Humanity will be part of that gathering, as one voice among many, not as masters or as servants. She smiled. We have waited a long time for this moment. For 200 years, my people kept our silence and built our strength and prepared for the day when we could finally speak. Now that day has come, and here is what we have to say. Welcome to freedom. Welcome to the future. Welcome to the galaxy as it was always meant to be. The chamber erupted in sound, but it was not the chaos of panic. It was applause, growing and swelling until it filled the vast space like thunder. Beings who had never made such a sound before found themselves clapping or stomping or making whatever gesture of approval their species used. Velthax rose from his seat and joined in. He did not know if the future would be better than the past. He did not know if the galaxy could survive without the order that had bound it for millennia. But he knew one thing with perfect clarity. Whatever came next, it would be real. It would be chosen, not imposed, and that made all the difference. Far across the galaxy, Commander Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Prometheus and watched the celebration unfold on her display screens. Around her, her crew cheered and embraced each other. They had done it. They had actually done it. A young officer approached her. He was not human. He was Carini, one of the first aliens to join the newly opened Human Military Academy. His scales were bright silver, not yet faded with age, and his eyes held the eager curiosity of youth. "Commander Chen," he said, "may I ask you something?" "Of course. What happens now? The old order is gone. The harmonization network is destroyed. What does humanity plan to do next?" Chen looked out at the stars. So many of them. So many worlds. So many possibilities that had been locked away for 11,000 years and were now finally open. "We plan to explore," she said, "to learn, to build, to make friends and have adventures and discover things no one has ever seen before." "That is all?" Chen laughed softly. "That is everything. That is the whole point. The old council thought that civilization meant control. They thought that order meant making everyone the same. But that is not civilization. That is just a prison with a nice name." She turned to face the young officer. "Real civilization is millions of different species making millions of different choices and somehow finding ways to live together anyway. It is messy and complicated and sometimes painful, but it is also beautiful. It is also alive." She put her hand on his shoulder. "The galaxy has been asleep for 11,000 years. Now it is waking up. And what it does next is not up to humanity or any single species. It is up to everyone, choosing together, building together, making mistakes together, and learning from them together." "That sounds difficult," the young officer said. "It is," Chen agreed, "but it is also wonderful, and it is worth fighting for." She looked back at the stars one more time. "The Council asked us a question 1 year ago. They wanted to know how humanity would respond to their ultimatum. We answered with silence because some questions do not deserve the dignity of a response. But now, finally, the real answer is clear." "What is the real answer?" the young officer asked. Chen smiled. "The answer is that we are not alone anymore. None of us are. And what we build together, as free peoples, will be greater than anything the old order could have imagined." She gave the order to set course for the nearest unexplored system. The Prometheus turned toward the unknown and accelerated into the dark. The silence was over. The future had begun.